After I graduated from high school, I applied to my colleges. I got into the college I wanted to get into, and then I realized I've been working. I mean, I loved it, but I've been working really hard. I wanted a little bit of a time to think. So I looked at overseas programs, and my father found a program that would actually send me to the Caribbean. It was very interesting, actually, because I got to go. It's a standard student exchange program after you leave high school. So you go for a year. You attend a high school there, and you basically learn the language and the culture. I went to the Dominican Republic, which was much more in development than it is now. Normally, they take overseas students and they place them in these very wealthy homes, so that you have 3 or 4 maids, and you've got an armed guard outside. It's very nice. The family that picked me was a complete anomaly. It was this skinny little civil engineer who lived way out in the woods. I mean, he was like 45 minutes outside of the capital city. We had this tiny little truck we'd bounce through the jungle with every day just to get to our house. And he'd sit in his back porch and he'd read like Indian philosophers. And his kids all thought he was strange. I loved him. This is great. So I spent a year after high school living in this little hut in the jungle outside of Santo Domingo. We rarely had electricity. We didn't have any running water. I would take baths in the local stream with the yaks and the cows and things like that, and I would just read. I read a tremendous amount while I was there. So it was a great year. So by the time I got done with that, and then I came back and attended my first year at university here on the East Coast. When I was in my sophomore year in high school, my father did a sabbatical in England, so picked the whole family up and moved us to just south of London. And I lived for a year there and traveled around Europe.
在上集中，布罗迪为明慧十方的观众谈了他的家庭观和教育观。当今世界变得格外纷繁多样，仍有很多人几乎没有选择，但也有很多人面临太多的选择。在这样的环境中，教育孩子的最根本点应该落在哪里呢？身为父亲的布罗迪是这样看的。
These days, I think in the West and the East, you see a lot of concern over test scores. But when it comes to the morality of the child and how they treat people, yes, there's a basic concern and they teach you not to hit other kids, but it's really not, their moral character is really not something that is dealt with a lot. It's all about their test scores. Don't hit other kids and make sure you get good test scores, good test scores, test scores, test scores. I think this is a real problem because your success in life, your happiness in life, all stems from the central issue of your character. Are you someone of moral quality? And I mean that at a very basic human level because it allows you to get along with people. I mean that at very profound levels in terms of you understand how karma works and you know how the universe works and how to work with that universe in harmony. So I think it's a very, very key issue for raising children. And coming back to your question about how I'd like them to, what kind of life I'd like them to live, I'd like them to be anchored in with their own moral compass to guide them. I think that's the most important thing, and that they understand the importance of virtue and they live by that. I think that's the kind of people I'd like them to become. In terms of the world, I hope that they live in a world that values that, that nurtures that in people, which is the exact opposite from what you're seeing in what the Communist Party is doing, which is trying to sort of nurture people to fight with each other and to condemn the other person and this kind of infighting, this sort of so-called social Darwinism.
道德作为一个人的根本固然重要，但现在社会上不仅年轻人倾向于认为竞争出强者，身为父母的也有很多人担心自己的孩子如果太善良，则很难在社会上立足。保持心灵的纯净和善性与在竞争中立足容身，这两者的关系如何把握为好呢？
There is that concept today that if you learn to compete and fight with each other, with all that fighting you'll get stronger. With all that competing you'll get smarter. But if you look at the real leap forwards, even in the scientific community, if you look at the real leap forwards that people have done, it's about when great minds come together and work with each other well. And that's where real advancement is made. You can, if you sit down to work with somebody, you're going to get a lot further when there's harmony between you than if you're constantly banging heads, because all the energy, even if it encourages you to work harder, all that energy banging each other's head, when you could be putting that energy to some forward progress. And I think you see examples of that in science, you see examples of that in politics. And again, we're just talking about the surface. We're just talking about, well, would the science advance further? Well, what about what happens to the karma of the people? What happens to, if you treat people horribly over and over and over again, do you think nothing's going to come back to you? Even if you did make more of a breakthrough in one little scientific area, what kind of life are you going to have, having done all those horrible things to all those people? In the long run, and very often in the short run, it's much, much worse when you teach people to be competitive and bang heads and mistreat each other to advance their own purpose.
过自己想过的生活，成为自己想成为的人。儿时我们都有这样的愿望，然而并非所有人都能保有那样的勇气和毅力，或者都能找到实现理想的精神指导。在即将步入不惑之年的时候，能平静地、自信地说此话的人是可喜可贺的。
Is that the biggest thing it's given me is to let me lead the life I've always wanted to live. Be the person I've always wanted to be. Well, I'll give you an example. I mean, I've always had, again, I had enough control to be perceived as very sort of nice and calm when I was young, but like when I get into basketball games, if I got a bad call from the ref, I mean, I would yell and scream and I'd throw stuff. And again, in that environment, it's sort of like, well, he's competitive, he's in the game, it's sort of okay. But it's not okay because that translates. That's part of who I am. So sometimes with the children, when the response, they do something and the response they need is someone to teach them the right thing, instead what they're getting from me is me just screaming at them. And that doesn't help. It hurts them. Doesn't do me any good. They're not growing, right? Because I have this sort of fire in me, this sort of competitive thing that just wants to lash out sometimes. If I can get through that, and I've seen myself get through that, the kids will do something where normally I'd just yell at them and tell them to go away. I can actually, it gives me space to sort of, first of all, look at them and say, okay, why did they do that? What were they thinking about? Okay, Jesse, come here. Come here. Let's walk through this. It's a totally different experience, and it changes their life. It's not just about me. It changes their life and their experience of growing up. Falun Gong does that for me. It takes that fiery temper that I have and changes it into somebody who's nurturing. You know, and again, that's one aspect. That happens in every part of my life, and it keeps going, and it opens up horizons. So that's, for me, that's been the most amazing thing. You know, a lot of people, when they go into spiritual practice, the most amazing thing is, you know, they got cancer, it was completely healed, or something like that. For me, there was just parts of me that at a certain point in time that I'm always just going to yell at the kids. It's just who I am. No. I can actually get rid of that stuff. And again, when I do, there's a whole other level of engagement I have with my sons because of it.
那么，作为家庭的支柱，布罗迪是如何对待夫妻之间的文化、观念以及行为差异的呢？
Well, my wife, a few cultural contexts here. My wife is from Taiwan, and at least the way she describes it is that, you know, love there is expressed by yelling. It's the tough thing, so she'll yell at me a lot. The old way is just to sort of, oh, she's yelling at me, or just leave, or just yell back, put her in her place, right? How's she yelling at me? This is my country, I know what I'm talking about. Put her in her place, right? That's the old way. The new way is, wait a minute, not worried about whether she's yelling at me or not. Look at what she's thinking. Why is she yelling? There's something in her heart. Maybe I didn't do right, but there's something going on there. Take a step back and see why is she going through that, and actually being able to work through it. And again, when you do that, you take a situation where it was just sort of like, and then we go our separate ways, and you turn it into actually a growth experience, and actually our marriage gets stronger. It seems like a small thing, but it changes your whole life. Because you put that instance, and that happens every day with somebody or someone, it's changing my whole life.